The following video was produced by the Pattaya City Expats Club, which is a non-profit social organisation, and our speakers are volunteers. The club, as such, assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker in this video. Okay?
Calvin, come on up and begin his, are you ready? He is. Okay, give him a warm welcome. Thank you, sir. There's a place to put your water down. You have to put it on the floor. That's you. Oh, I'm the water. Oh, nobody told me that. You want to be up here?
Check one. Alright, so you have to bear with me. I've got a slight eye problem for the last couple of weeks and you're all a bit of a blur, but that's okay. On each table you'll see one of these leaflets. So put that in your pocket for later on, and through the presentation I'll explain what we're all about. So here we go. Sorry, I have to turn around and watch this. There's no monitor in front of me. So it's a Thai law company, Thai 88 Law. I'll first start the talk with an intro about what we're doing. And excuse my back, but I've got to read this. An intro about Thai 88. Then we'll talk a bit about life and how we journey through it and gain an identification, and how that all fits in with probate. Anyone here doesn't know what probate is? I think you'll understand a bit more when we get through. Then I've got 4 case studies that you can have a look at. And one of them is Laurie's. I've been given permission by the children to use him as an example for this speak today. Monkhouse, our association with Monkhouse, sort of funeral directors, and maybe some of you have a prepaid with them. I'll talk about that at the very end. Now, I have a disclaimer as well. This is a presentation. It's for talk. It's not a one-to-one, so I can't advise you legally. I may waffle on occasionally, but that's not to be construed as fact. It's just trying to dress up the presentation a bit. The case studies that we're using, they are real case studies, and I haven't cherry-picked them. These are the latest 4 cases that I've handled, and I have approval from the people involved in the wills and the executors and people like that. So that's my disclaimer. A little bit about Thai Law 888. Jep, my partner, we started this some years ago, and we actually spent the first year sleeping on the sofa in the office until things picked up. And we now have Office 10. We had to separate those work because being a foreigner in Thailand, there's certain work I can do in a law office and there's other work I can't do. Probate is one of those things I can do. Now, Office 12 we bought recently. That'll handle all the criminal, civil, family, company and consumer law issues, any other issue that you might have about child custody or adopting children, something like that. It comes up every now and again. Jeb in Office 12 is the person that would handle that. I do all the other things. Our company has 2 registered lawyers to Office 10. We have 2 law graduates from Sigerton University. Kim, there's a picture of him coming up soon. Quite a bright young kid. We have 2 notaries to sign your different documents that need a notarization for overseas or here. We have 4 office staff, and just in the last 12 months we've added our Bangkok branch, so to speak, which is handling funerals and embassy and consulate documents. So we don't have to leave Jomtien to go up to Bangkok to have all that done. We've got 2 extra staff to do that. Now, our company is registered with the DBD as Thai Law Company, and we have one foreigner's work permit, that's mine. It says the nature of the work is that I work in that office. So if you hear any rumours or stories about the company being legitimate or not having lawyers or notaries or things like that, then that's not true. This is the proof of the pudding. Now, it's very difficult to... Okay, just quickly, we'll get on to the meaty stuff soon. This is our, not our office, but that's the building of the Vutile 5D, and we're on the 2nd floor as you go up the ramp. This is very handy because it's it has a ramp, and for anyone that's handicapped, it's ideal to get to our office. There's no problems there. There's lots of parking, things like that. This is Bern. She's doing the accounts and business accounts for other companies. This is Kim. He's a graduate from Sipatum University. He topped the grades for last year, so we're happy to have him on board. This is Yong. She does everything at the DBD, the Business Department Development, Land Office, Tax, Labour Department, all those sorts of things. She handles all that. This is the big boss, Jep, looking a bit stern there, but she founded the company and she's the director. Doing quite a good job after all these years. That's me as the CEO. The young lady on the right-hand side, that's Natcha. She does all the translation from English to Thai, Thai to English, and she's excellent, very, very good. As you'll find out later on, there's a lot of documents that need to be translated. That's me with PCEC the lawyer and Jep up in Chiang Mai Court doing a probate. We flew up there to fix that one up. I don't know if you can see the dog in the corner, the upper right there, sleeping out in front of the courtroom. That was something I got in Chiang Mai, yes. That's my new recent role, being the MC at some of the funerals and cremations where family and friends can't come. I take over that role and we do the whole package. And in Bangkok, that's Jep's sister on the left and her husband No. And they've started doing all of the documents for the consulate and handling some of the funerals up there. There's a lot to do, as you may realise. Okay, so we are registered with the DBD and you can check on us. That's my work permit. You can come and have a look at that if you like. And we're on Google, so that's our address there. You just put in Thai 888 and we'll pop up, and there's some references there. We've got a few reviews at 5 stars, so people are quite happy. Okay, so this is a little something, just a sidetrack about life, how we build our identity and how at the end when you passed away, that all has to be undone, and that's done through probate. So I don't know if you recognise that chap up there, but that was me when I was about 18. And I didn't have a care in the world. I was footloose, fancy free, no blood pressure, no sugar problems, nothing. And again, just party, have fun, get on with it. That was at a friend's wedding. I wasn't even 18 at that stage because I couldn't drive to the wedding. But no cares, no problems. Then started travelling, of course. $5 a day, backpack, all that sort of thing. That was my plan. It's a straight road up to the finish line, but life's plan or God's plan is somewhat different, and you have all these pitfalls and health issues and tragedies and all that sort of thing. So, you know, it's not a straight road. Now, we start by life, and we're growing an identity. And the first one is your birth certificate with your mum and dad and your date of birth and things like that, which comes in handy all the way through your life. Then you go to school and get a bank account. Your first major purchase is a car or license, insurance. Then you might get a criminal offence, that's drinking under the influence in the Australian term, so you have a record then. University, loans, girlfriend, marriage, first house, mortgage, all of these things that you apply for and you do, you go onto a database, a registry, and that's building your identity. So particularly now with Facebook and all sorts of things like that, everyone can know everything about you. So the more things you do, the more of a database you build up about yourself. Now, assets start to grow as you get on top of things, or maybe you'll start a family, so that's where your income and assets will be going into, and then you start to budget for that. And then after the family, maybe you got enough to save for the future, your retirement or government pension schemes, insurance for your health, life insurance. I'm sure you know this picture here, living in Thailand when you're retired. An investment portfolio so that you've got a little bit extra income when you're living here. Just basically planning for the future. All these things are building up, and their papers are building up, the documents are building up, the database about you is building up. And if you make it through all of that, you may, as you guys here, might get to retire in Pattaya. But you've still got all that baggage, you've still got all that ID and things in other countries and things that might have to be undone. So this is life, this is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Right? This is John Lennon, classic, it's just a classic quote there about what happens. Then unfortunately something happens and life stops. Now all that identity that you spent building up over the last 60, 70 years, it has to be unwound. And your identity, your assets that you've accumulated over all that time, that's all about to change hands. So if you fail to plan all of those things in your life, then it's going to get really messy for the person that has to undo everything. So you have an insurance for health, the car, the house, and everything else, but some people just don't have a will. I think it's about 54% of people have a will and some don't. But the will is your last contract, if you like. That makes sure that the people who are listed in the will get those assets. They can't go to the government, they can't go to some other family member that doesn't deserve it, which is what's happened in some of our case studies. I'll go through that in a little bit. As some people say, I don't have anything, so I don't need a will. Well, you need to contact the embassy, there's the courts, not courts, the police, the forensic lab is involved, there's next of kin involved, there's affidavits involved, there's a whole lot of legal things that you need to do, but it doesn't really necessarily mean about the assets. You know, you are the asset, and that asset is gone, and then it has to be sent to the right place or looked after in the right way. Now, Thai law and international law, there's some similarities, but the Thai law here is that it needs to be in Thai to be presented to the court. And you don't want to confuse the two, because here in Thailand you have a will and you have an executor, and they have to go to court to be approved, because if the will is not legal, then it's invalid, and then it goes into another section of the law. Same thing if you've nominated an executor and they're not, if they have a criminal record, they're incompetent or they're bankrupt, they can be disqualified by the courts. So this brings us to today's subject, which is probate. So we've dressed up life and we've built the identity. Now we're coming to the point where you have to produce all of that information to get probate to start. Just before we move on, there's some people that just won't make it to that stage of retiring here. A young girl filling up the cup with the gasoline. A picture from Johannesburg. These people might not make it. Some of the builders, I would have used a broomstick and a roller, I think. Yes, not every day. What's in there? And that's what mates are for. It's going to carve him out of another life. All right. So what is probate? What could possibly go wrong? Now, non-Thai people, you guys, the foreigners, what does this mean? Any idea? Not a hand. All right. All right. Translation is, this is your last will and testament. Who you are, your holder, where you live. This is for Thailand only. It doesn't. These are the documents. There's hundreds of them, and they're in Thai. So that's the first part of the will. But the way we make our will is it's in English Thai always through it. So if you're going to do the probate or be the executor, you have to be aware that everything's going to be in Thai, even in the courtroom. Now, probate's a process. There's, of course, the person dies, the police are notified. Now, the next of kin, that's a knock, needs to be identified. The embassy, they contact some of the family members if there's no one else there to contact. The hospitals have to be paid off, the last bill if the person died in the hospital. Then the temple and cremation and all those things have to be organised. Plus you've got family, friends, mourning, wanting to fly in, wanting to help, hotels organised, all that sort of thing. The temple on the day, the food, the water, the chairs. You can imagine there's hundreds and hundreds of things to do. Then we get to the point where we have to apply to the court. So this is where it really begins. You have to get a lawyer to write a plaint, and that's a document to go to the court to say, we want court time to have you listen to this application for probate. So that can take some time to get a court date. It could be 3 months. Then when you go to court, there's a grant of probate, which the judge says, okay, that will's okay, that person's okay, I'll give them the grant of probate to wind up the estate. So it sounds very simple, but a couple of case studies will show you that it's quite complicated. So when you've wound up the estate, you might have to sell properties, cars, things like that. So the land office is involved, banks are involved, and things like that. And I've wound up a few estates, and I've gone to the bank saying, okay, I need to send this money back to this country. They've said, where did the money come from? I said, well, I have the court order, it's come from court. This is a probate issue. Oh, but where did the money come before that person got it? I don't know. I don't know where that money came from. I knew it was in his account when I cleaned it out. So you're going to have to deal with the anti-money laundering office as well, which is another bureaucratic nightmare. So I've got a couple of case examples here. We'll see what can go wrong. This is a case study. Actually, this is my mother's probate. So I'll talk to you about this. It's not a problem. It's a process. So my mother died in last year in Queensland. Unfortunately, I've got a little pointer here. This is a type of will that you buy from the supermarket or the newsagent, and you notice here that the date hasn't been filled in properly, so that part makes it void. You also notice here that it's typed here, and you fill in the gaps. Now, page 2 is, again, you'll see some problems here. I've got another little insert later on. There's an alteration here to this person's name, and there's an addition here. You can't do that. There's a point here where the dates are different, and down here you'll see that looks like a baht sign for the dollars that were allocated to someone there, and there's a dollar sign there. Now notice here, there's no witness. This, because it's a typed will and a handwritten will, it has to have 2 witnesses there. Okay. This up here is not my mother's handwriting. This is my mother's handwriting here. So there's a few things wrong with this document. Here again you'll see there's no date. And down here you'll see, don't forget the date. Now this woman here, hello, she's a witness. She's also a beneficiary, and you can't do that. They have a vested interest in it then, so this has been very shaky, this will. I don't mind sharing this because it shows you what can go right and wrong. Yeah, a few more alterations up there. Now, how many think that will is valid? Anyone think it's valid? Okay, good. Now, to complicate matters, in the same folder, my mother had written something else. Dear family. Now, a will always starts with I, Kelvin Banfield, because that identifies the person making that contract. This one is not identifying my mother. Then you'll see up here the date 20/24. There's some alterations here to the value of the bereavement. Now you see this is 2024. This has been added later on at 2016, I take it. Forget all this bit, this is me redacting the personal stuff out of it. So you see the dates are different and the additions are here, and they're not countersigned. You have to countersign something when you add things in there to make sure you did it and it wasn't done after the fact. Again, some more corrections over here. Crossing things out. I think my name's back there somewhere. That's my brother's name. A few other things up here. Now, this one's the kicker. My mother always signed June Dorothy Bamfield, and for some strange reason she's printed her name, and that's her maiden name there, Powell. Right. And it's dated down here, which is okay. Now, this is another document found in the same folder. No date, no name, no signing it, and she's simply initialed it JB, June Bamfield, which is not good, not at all. So which will do you think was valid as far as the court was concerned? Any ideas? Neither. Good call. This one. The Supreme Court of Queensland found I call this the shopping pad will. It was just notes made by my mother. Unfortunately, this is just on the 13th, that's been overturned. They did find that shopping list will was valid for some reason, with all the problems on it. But today the cost has been over $15,000 and no decision. The estate's not that big. We tried to go to mediation, but that didn't happen. Okay, Laurie. Cheers to Laurie. The boys gave me permission to use this information today. Laurie had a will that wasn't valid, unfortunately. There was only one witness and the will was typed. Now, if you're going to make your own will, you can handwrite it and you can sign it and date it, and that's okay. But as soon as it starts getting typed like this, you have to have two witnesses, two. This would have been okay except for down here, another witness. Would have saved a lot of issues, honestly. Just there. Now, what could possibly go wrong here? All right, the will was ruled invalid. That meant that Laurie died intestate, and so the succession laws come in then when it goes to his family, his children. He was divorced, so it didn't go to his wife. Now, the children had to prove their ID. There was a whole bunch of paperwork there, notaries, their passport. The daughter didn't have a passport, so we had to use her license. All this had to go to a notary in Australia and then sent back. Now, there was 5 court hearings on this very, very simple estate because of one signature. Now, the process of probate is that the children gained legal access because they were siblings. Then they could nominate an executor. And the 2 boys flew out for Laurie's funeral. They signed powers of attorney with us in my office. Then we thought we could use that, but the court said no. They would have to resign. So the first up, there's a letter of resignation to resign as an executor. And then there's another letter which appoints me as the executor through a power of attorney, POA. And then it has to go to court to appoint me, so there's 3 sessions. First you resign, then you nominate someone else, and then they pick it up if they want. Now, if I had not wanted to do that, I had 15 days to say I don't want to be the executor. And then I have another 30 days for people to challenge, to come forward and say, no, I don't want Kelvin to be the executor. And I challenged the will and all sorts of things like that. So you're looking at a 45-day period there. Now, there was an issue that Laurie and I had about conflicts of interest, and I've talked to a couple of people here, and it's a bit of a grey area as well. After discussions with Laurie, and there was some board talk as well, TIE decided that the best course of action would be to make co-executors. So this keeps everything above board. So an executor, as you just saw, the courts award that person all the power to do everything, to sell the condo, the house, the car, all that sort of thing. So it's quite a lot of power. And by being the co-executor, you have to work with someone else. So family member, but they don't have to be here. I can still go to court. So we found that the best course of action. That way we've eliminated any conflict of interest because we're working with a family member. Okay, now it was just a couple of weeks back that this got wrapped up, April 2018, so it's finished after an entire year. This is something else you should be aware of. This person died in a Chonburi hospital. There was no will. He was an American, and a lot of documents regarding the IRS and hiding money from them and all that sort of thing. So he's very secretive about his assets and his identity, things like that. He had 2 passports and different names, and he had accounts all over the world, Caymans, Nicaragua, all that sort of thing. And this has landed on my desk to undo. There's certain things I can do, like take care of the hospital here and the doctors and things like that. And he had a bank account, I can do all that. But this international stuff is just something for you guys if you're doing it. You know, you're planning your estate and your retirement and things like that. You should be very mindful about where these things are, and someone should have access to them. Because I was looking for some sort of black book or something on the phone to tell me that that was his login and his password or his PIN or something like that. There's nothing. So there's millions of dollars of land and houses and accounts all overseas that we can't touch. So the planning there wasn't so good. We can't get to the funds anywhere. I've got a couple of ones from the Cayman Islands of his, but we can't do that because they'll make a court order that we need, and then they'll put up their bank legal wall, and someone will have to go there and try and undo it. That will be the sister, because I have no jurisdiction there. Yeah, so same with Singapore and Hong Kong. A lot of people with their Hong Kong Savings Bank in Hong Kong and Singapore, they will require you to go there and do a probate case with their lawyers, which is quite costly. So if someone doesn't have your access codes and things like that, then you'll have to go to Hong Kong, Singapore or another country to mount a case, which would be expensive. This is the Cayman Islands wire transfer. So I know the account exists, but I don't know much else about that. His passport from Nicaragua. Okay. So there's just examples of how to make sure someone knows what you've got and where it is. Probate for this, because he had a bank account here. I was dealing with the sister on the internet. There was Skype, there was face-to-face. She was coming over 2-3 times and then said, no, I can't do that, can you do that? So it's been about 6 months building trust with her. Now, when we took it to court, the judge required a lot of documents, birth certificates from mother and father to prove that you were related to that person that died in a hospital in Chonburi. So you've got to understand the process that the judge wants. So all those bits of paper had to, plus all of this had to be translated as well and certified by the Department of Foreign Affairs. So it's quite a complex thing if you're thinking of being the executor. All right, lesson learned there, be careful where you put your assets so someone can find them. That case is still going on. I'm hopeful that next week I'll get a Grand Probate to look into the banks and see if there's a safe box there with some black boxes and books and things like that to tell me where things are. So far, nothing. Good friend of mine died January 1 this year. Saw him every other day. He was meticulous with his accounts. write down how many beers he had, that sort of thing. Had a big portfolio, lots of spreadsheets, but he'd mixed his assets with UK and with Thailand. And so there was a lot of implications when you mix everything up and you pass away. Tax being number one, because they wanted to add the Thai assets to the UK assets, and that would have given us a 40% tax on anything over £350,000. So be mindful about that. I always write the will that it's for Thailand only, Thailand assets only, keep it separate. Now, unfortunately, there has been a lot of cases that I get where the people aren't married, and there's no common law here which says that your partner is going to get those assets. In Australia, for example, I think if you spend a month with someone, that's considered your common law partner, and they would have a claim on your estate. It doesn't happen here, and it doesn't happen in the UK. So all the assets have to be transferred because they don't automatically be inherited by the partner or the wife. So it has to go through the land office and a whole bunch of things, which complicates issues. If they had been married, that would have passed with a little bit of tax to the wife, but that didn't happen, so now they're up for a lot of tax, and I'd be very upset to pay the tax man 40%. The other problem we found was that the spreadsheets were coded, like he was meticulous in everything he did, but there was codes used on the spreadsheet to say, this is my username, and it had star, 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 blah, blah, blah. And this is my PIN for my ATM, and that's star, star, and a couple of letters. And unfortunately, when we went to the machines, we weren't sure whether it was 4 or 6 digits for the PIN on the ATM. So we, unfortunately, everything we tried, we locked it up. You get 3 shots, and we tried every combination, and then boom. Everything's locked up in the UK and in Thailand. So the unfortunate thing there is that that's going on here. Okay, now she went on a plane back to the UK, and we had to have 12 death certificates translated and stamped by the Department of Foreign Affairs consulate in Bangkok, so that the banks would accept that in England. So that process is rolling on now. That'll probably take 3 to 5 years to undo the UK estate. Okay, you just can't give things to people. You think, oh, I've got a car, I'll give that to them, I'll do this, I'll do that. You have to will it to them. That way you've got a legal contract document to say, okay, that person does have to get that, and you've got a court order to back it up. Again, 3 to 5 years. British solicitors, £600 an hour. Right, so the clock's ticking. They're going to get their slice of the pie, plus the tax department probably knock out about 55% of the estate. That hurts after you spend your whole life building all that. My advice would be, if you've got a trusted third party, that you have all of those little usernames and passwords and everything there, PIN codes, all that sort of thing, in an envelope or a book. You can go and hire a lockbox somewhere. You can give it to someone in another country that it's only to be opened when you pass away. Just make things a real lot easier, and you'll save a lot of money on taxes and lawyers. Okay, so do we have the Dropbox for that little black book? Everyone needs a little black book somewhere. Okay, just last 3 cases have been very interesting, because before, if you recollect, I said that Thai 888 would be the co-executors in the wills. That was our new standard operating procedure. But in the last 10 days, I've had 3 calls from overseas saying that that person was in hospital and they've got property here. So what's happened is they've owned property, they've got bank accounts, they've got sick, they're old, they've gone back to their home country, and they've got the there's the NHS, the bit of free medical, things like that they paid into all their life. And they can't return. The airlines won't let them on the plane, and they're stuck overseas, their assets are here, and so what do they do? So, no will, of course. So what we've suggested to them, that we draft a will here, in Thai and English. We get 2 witnesses that are in, for one of the cases it's in Israel, get their names inserted into the will, translated into Thai and English, then email it to them. They get their witnesses in the room, same pen with the testator, the guy signing the will. They sign it, then they courier it back here, making Thai AAA the executor. Now this negates the Department of Foreign Affairs and a whole bunch of things which they could put up walls against. So it's unusual that in the last 10 days I've had 3 of these cases come to my desk. So if you've got someone overseas that's in dire straits, got properties here, don't run the gauntlet of getting all these documents done. Have another will written, sign it, courier it back. It'll save you a fortune and time. Okay, nominated 2 witnesses, email the will back, sign, save time, money, right. Okay, finally, Monkhouse. About 12 months ago, things happened there. I had a contract with Clive Monkhouse to do the referrals from here, from the club, for anyone who wanted a prepaid or a funeral arranged, things like that. So we never charged a commission, we didn't do anything like that. The hope was that they would send customers back to us for probate to look at all that. So I was happy to outsource that to Monkhouse because they did everything, and they would give us the legal opportunity to do the probate. Monkhouse closed their office up in Bangkok. They're merging, and that story's been going around for a while now. In the meantime, people were still passing away and needing help, all that sort of thing. So Jet decided that she'd start doing the funeral business with her sister in Bangkok. So hence the first slide where we had the Jet's sister and husband. They will do all that. We have an office now that does the will, the funeral, the cremation, the legal work. Everything's done now through our 2 offices in Jomtien. All right, so we're not dealing with Monkhouse, although our advertising for the last 6 years is heavily with Monkhouse. And we're listed at the embassies as the preferred suppliers, all that sort of thing, but we're legally not associated with them at all because they've changed their name to something else, they've merged with another company. But we're still riding on that advertising. If anyone's got a prepaid with Monkhouse, they either have the opportunity to ask for a refund, or they can see what happens, whether their merger works or not. I think another week or so you'll know the answer there. Okay, we're a one-stop company for all that, as I explained. You can see all the hurdles that you had before in some of the slides. If you want to do that, I think great. If you want to write your own will, fabulous. I hope you've got some ideas on how to write them. It's much easier to just outsource these things. Okay, that's it, wrapped up. I'm done, except for questions.
I have a question to you. Over at the back, please.
All right. Mr. Richard is the Montgomery.
Yes, I am with Monkhouse, and I do have a prepaid. If I understood what you said, in addition to the merger, your company through Jeb is forming their own company or service to provide funerals. Is it possible to transfer money or the Monkhouse arrangement to your firm to Jeb?
Okay, first, the DVD registration says about the nature of your work. So the nature of our work now has been changed, like to include funeral services. The second part, you'll have to write an email to Monkhouse because they were supposed to have the money housed in a trust in Australia. But Clive has since left the company. Dow is the contact, and I can arrange that for you later on to make contact. The third part is that do we do that? We can, but we're not set up for that sort of thing. But Dow, who's made her own company now, she is still accepting prepaids. You can lodge the money with our company, and we would put that in a special account for you. But we really haven't done that before. We're not promoting that as such. But in the case of yourself, you can have the money somewhere else. There's always access to your funds when something happens. If I'm the executor in your will, I'll advance the money. I'll do all those things, pay for everything, and then I'll claim it back from the estate because I can control the estate. So the prepaid thing, the only thing the prepaid thing has got going for it is that it doesn't go up each year, like costs go up through inflation and things like that, but a pre-plan will always stay the same 20 years in the future. I can't see costs going up that much, Richard. But if you want, I'll look after it. I'll invest it on number 8 black. I'll double your money overnight, mate, I'm sure. All right.
Okay, thank you. The second question, my wife, we have a tie will, as you know. My wife is my beneficiary for everything. At some point, we have an apartment of our own, and we have a couple of others that we rent out. When I pass and she assumes these properties, I thought I read someplace in the Thai law that she could only own those properties for 1 year and then would have to sell them.
No, you're a resident on a non-O visa, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay.
It's only if that property, like with there's a unit and the kids are overseas, they're non-residents. They're under a different visa and they can't take that. They have to sell it within 12 months, 12 to 18 months.
Okay, thank you.
Which reminds me, I have a couple of condos that are under probate that I can't sell. They're at Bank Surrey, so anyone interested in 2 very, very nice cheap properties. No, it's my job. I have to get rid of them. I've got to get them off the books. Okay, another question, Darryl?
Yes, Calvin. You and I have previously had some conversations regarding the pre-grant, which I have one. And I just thought you might be interested. I got this last Thursday. It's an email from Dow for AMAR International Asia, which is their company name.
Yeah.
And it was a blanket, but went out to inform them that the company now is established. They can do business. They're in a temporary location while they renovate some other things. But I wanted to say that if anyone has a prepaid and is interested, if they want, you can email me at inbox. Well, look in the newsletter for visa assistance, and you'll see my email address. You can address me, and I will forward you a copy of the email that I received from them, which says basically we're in business, and I'm going to contact them. I've got a couple of questions for them.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm leaving mine with.
Yeah, sure. It's a up to you situation. Some people are just a bit worried about getting their funds out of that merger, but that's up the back there. Miss Pat.
Hi, thanks for a very informative talk. I have 2 quick questions. The first one is, I've been told by somebody who I thought knew, which should know, that a handwritten will in English in Thailand is not valid. Did I misunderstand you, or is there?
No, it's got to have if it's handwritten, there's no typing on it. So it's totally handwritten all the way through, holographic, okay, and signed, then that would have to be translated and then presented to the court, and the court would determine whether they accept that or not, because normally there's no executor listed. It only has some possessions and who those goods are to go to, but there's no one to manage or administer that will, and so the court will appoint someone.
What if an executor is named?
Oh, that's okay, because it's handwritten. There's an executor there, there's the address and the ID of that person, and then it's signed and dated.
So then it doesn't have to go through probate?
No, it does, because if, for example, you had a condo or something like that, you have to transfer that through the land office and pay taxes and transfers, and same with a car, that the registration has to be transferred across, and you can't do any of that unless you have the right paperwork. And you need a court order to do most things. Any money in the bank, you need a court order to go to the bank.
Okay.
Spend half a day sitting there while they try and work out what it is.
Okay. Well, that brings me to my second question, which is, if the only asset you have in Thailand is your bank account, and if you go to the bank and take along a trusted friend and make that friend your beneficiary, is that acceptable?
No, that's a form of power of attorney. That ceases to exist when that person who owns the account ceases to exist. So you can't have a power of attorney after. It doesn't work. What would happen was, like I said, if you get a little black book or an envelope and you put the username and the PIN in there, then you'll save all of that issue with the court, with the banks, and someone that is the beneficiary can then go and take the money out of that account. But I didn't say that.
So what if that person gets to the bank and has your PIN number and everything and can just take the money out before the bank is notified that you passed?
No, it'd have to be through the ATM or the internet, so internet access is pretty reliable now. The problem with Laurie's account was that there was no bank book. We couldn't find any ATM or bank book or anything. So the account couldn't be cleared out, so I had to go through all that nonsense for a year. So that's why I'm advising people, you know, if you're going to plan something, plan that little envelope somewhere. Get a lockbox somewhere, put it in there, because when you pass away, that'll be in your will. That someone, the administrator should go to that place, get that lockbox open, and take out the book, and then the accounts are open for you to see what's in there.
Okay, thank you.
You say that you have notary service. If I bring you a copy of the letter that I used from the embassy for income, can you notarize that letter? And go
No.
Why?
The embassy has to do that. The American system's somewhat different. Yes. Even a letter of next of kin, you have to do an affidavit with the American
Well, it just
system.
bugs me. They get $50 for every time just
Yeah,
sign signatures.
unfortunately, for England, Australia, or any other country, we're okay with, or the US system. Yes.
No.
Okay, I have one brief item. You referenced the black book and the lockbox. Are you familiar with this thing called Dead Man's Handle?
No.
Okay, it's an email system where you have to log in once a month, and if you don't, it automatically distributes the message that you pre-formatted, which obviously would normally contain confidential information. That's a recent development.
My card's on the table. If you can send me that link, I'd be appreciated.
Tony.
Yes, one here.
Yeah, I've got going. What happens in the event that executor and/or witnesses predecease? Is the will rendered invalid?
No. The court, if that sort of thing happens and there is a will, this is why Laurie's point was quite pertinent, that there's an executor and there's co-executors. We have alternate beneficiaries as well, just in case the little green bus hits everyone in the restaurant that night. there's someone to take over, right? So try and make sure there's maybe a co-executive there. If it all falls off the rails, you can still take it to court, and the court can then nominate either a court person or someone else who will be the executor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So always have a co-executor. If you're an orphan or something else like that, or you don't want other people to know what you're doing, then sole executor. For basic stuff that happens here, I'd say make co-executor, and the co-executor would be Thai AAA. It wouldn't be me, because I might not be around, but the company will. And because it's a law office registered, that means that can go to another law firm and they can pick it up if we cease to exist.
Okay, and a hypothetical, if you have no registered assets, no vehicle, no condo or anything like that, what is the actual requirement for that, for the will to be processed? If, for instance, you know, your family have all the codes and they take the money as appropriate, but
that, plus you still have your body, which has to be taken care of. And because you're a foreigner in this country, if you die outside the hospital, you have to go to the forensic hospital for an autopsy, cause of death. Death certificate has to be issued, consulate's involved, the embassy of your country's involved, power of attorney from different people to cremate the bodies and the ashes back. So there's a whole bunch of things. Just if you've got no bank accounts and no assets, it's still your body. They just can't, you know, cremate and put it into the ocean. There's a whole lot of bureaucratic documents to go through that as well.
Thanks.
Over here?
Yeah, here. I have a will, and my wife has a will, my Thai wife, drawn up by a Thai attorney. Could I bring those to you?
Sure.
And you look them over and
Absolutely.
make sure everything's good?
Free.
Okay, thanks.
Over here, Calvin.
Very interesting. That's one question. Do you recommend that the wife makes a second will and you make a will? Because if she dies before you, and you've made all your assets over to her,
Absolutely.
is it true that then the family of her inherit those assets? That's one question.
Yeah, okay, let me answer that by an example. I don't know how many people have been down to the Jomtien complex in Jomtien. There was a Cafe Ritz there, and by John, 84 years old. His wife was half his age. He thought, okay, I'm going crazy. He went back to England. Turns out the medication he was on was upsetting him, and there was nothing wrong with him, and he came back. In the meantime, his young wife had died. Before he left, he had given her everything, the restaurant, massage, the house, the whole thing. So John came back, I think he's 86 now, came back and the family had taken over. And he had nothing at 86. So I would advise to have the wife, although she's half your age, or your partner, make a will, because if something happens to them, they're on the motorbike, they've got a pretty good chance of getting wiped out. Your assets are tied up with her and the family, and then it's gone. And you're out in the street, so big, you know, just hedge your bet there, I think. It's cheap enough.
Yeah, I know John personally.
Yeah.
I saw him when he was ill.
Yeah.
And we were in contact, and his neighbour rang him up while he was in hospital and said, "What's happening? You sold your house?" He said, "No." He said, "Well, there's loads of people emptying your house."
Yeah, just shutting it. They took everything.
They even took the light bulbs.
Everything was gone.
Everything was gone.
I'm glad you raised that point.
Yeah. One other thing is, what worries me about this Monkhouse thing, because I was considering it because of my age, the fact that they close the office, there's people obviously here who have invested, and it makes me wonder if you're long-term investing and it all goes pear-shaped, why not steal money? I mean, so many things that we've invested in Thailand,
Yeah,
and
understand.
people have lost thousands and thousands of pounds.
Absolutely.
So, just
The thing with Monkhouse, why I chose to be with them, was that they've been in operation for 155 years. No one, there's a story to this, I'll tell you in private, but I'm not going to stand here and tell you what happened with Clive. But yeah, it was pretty messy. I was involved in it, in a lot of the getting money back and things like that. But it's not over yet. I'm happy if they get up and running again and they honour those things. But there's a lot happening in the background still. When they got shop fronting Bangkok, all the rest of it, yes, okay, I'll probably come down here and give a talk. But in the meantime, we had no alternative but to do this ourselves, and it's been quite successful. We can control everything from the one office. One more?
Do you suggest putting something in the will in case the whole family is wiped out?
Well, that's why we always have the beneficiaries. There's 2 places there for beneficiaries, and then if something happens, then there's alternate beneficiaries. And then in Laurie's case, like, you have a succession law, so those siblings or wife are not there, or they're predeceased, the testator, then it goes into succession, so it'll go down through the kids and half-bloods and full-bloods, and it goes down the line. So it'd be very unusual if the government acquired things and sold it up and kept it. You'd have to be a total orphan with no one to...
If there was an accident and the husband and wife killed, how does the succession work as far as ages?
Well, the way we write them is that it should have alternate beneficiaries. So if they've got kids in the family, they would go to the siblings. So, and then if there's no kids, it would go to nephews and nieces. There's about 5 levels of who would get it before the government does. The only thing, if you're, like I said, if you're an orphan, that's the other thing. We have a lot of people that they don't have family left, and they never did have family. They were orphans, and so they've given their money and their assets to the orphanages here in Thailand, and our company is named as the controller of that property, so that we can dish that out to those charities on a weekly, monthly, or receipt basis. They come in and say they want to build a new toilet block. I can take it from that estate and give them that on receipt, so I can control where all of that's going. That's in the case of someone being an orphan, leaving all their money to charities. The other thing is that if you're bequeathing something to a kid, they have to be 20 to inherit that. So you need what's called a controller of the property. That can be the executor, it can be the law firm, it could be anything. So they dish out money on a regular basis for school fees or food, that sort of thing. And then when the kid gets to 20, you can sign all of that across, but not before. So someone has to control that for maybe 10 years. Sorry.
Does Thailand allow dual citizenship for children?
That's a difficult road to travel.
Could I just remind you, if you have a question, please stand up so people can see you on the other side of the room. I have one here, Tony.
Hello, Kelvin. Thank you for what you've done so far. Earlier in your presentation, you spoke about the lifetime of paperwork that we inadvertently find ourselves with. If I was planning to come to you to write a will, do you need that paperwork? Would it help if you had some of that paperwork?
On the bench over there, there's a checklist, and it tells you what I need from you to give to me so I can start the will. And then when you're finished proofing it, I send it to you by email. When you finish proofing it, you're happy, we print it, you come in, we've got 2 witnesses there, and sit there and sign it. But the checklist is there for anyone on the table that wants.
There's one on your left here, please.
Hello, my name is Philip. A slightly different question. Is it possible to have a non-religious funeral in Thailand?
Well, depends if you want to go in the ground or you want to go into the fire.
Into the fire.
So you have to go to a temple, because they're the only ones registered to do that kind of work.
Okay,
So
so
you have to get a certificate to say that you've been cremated, and overseas banks and governments and everything uses that certificate to make sure that that did happen. That's signed off by the temple.
and if you go into the ground,
I've only had 2 cases like that. It was St. Nick's, I think, which was a Catholic church, and the poor man hadn't been baptised or something like that. There was a whole bunch of things about being baptised. Being a Catholic, I forgot most of all the rituals that they go through, but it was expensive, very expensive. Repatriation was cheaper. Sorry.
thank you very much.
Do they have living wills in this country?
Yes, they do. We do those as well. My last living will was on January 1, where I went to the hospital and ordered the staff to take out the machines, which they were bringing in to check things, but they'd already pronounced my friend as brain dead, no chance of coming back. And they insisted on bringing in machines, and I said, no, get them out. And so that's a slightly different thing, because it's you have to nominate a surrogate. A surrogate's the person that will act for you when you can't. So there's only 2 conditions: you're terminally ill, and you've got a track record of being terminally ill, and you're full of morphine, and you're non-compass. And the other one is that maybe you had a bike accident, car accident, fell off the balcony or whatever, and you're brain dead.
In the U.S., a living will is a little different than that, in that the transfer of assets are done differently as opposed to going to a probate. That's what I was asking.
No, not here.
As a U.S. citizen and having a U.S. drafted will, they're void if I die in title. Is that what you're saying?
Would be very difficult to enforce, because first thing, they're written in English, and you go to a Thai hospital and start waving around the enduring power of attorney, I think it's called in the States, isn't it? Enduring power of attorney. So that doesn't work here.
Oh, yes. Don't die here.
Okay, at the back.
Hello? Yeah. Can I continue? Yes. It's very informative. Thank you very much for all this information, and maybe we should meet in the future. I have some bills and so on, but it should be time to go through them. I just want to tell you how things can also go very, very simple.
Yes.
My brother passed away in Sweden 10 months ago, and he just needed a certificate from the hospital that he was dead. And I needed only a certificate that I was his next in line, so to say, and I his brother and so on. And no involvement from any lawyers, from the police, nothing. Then I just could transfer all his assets, etc., etc.
What assets were they?
Oh, they were a small condo, and it was it was a car, and there was some kind of investments being done. Not very big, but I mean, I don't think it would have been different. It would have been big or small.
So what's happened today is I didn't cherry pick these cases because I wanted to say how difficult it was, and you really need to come and see me and things like that. These are the last 4 cases that are current, so I didn't go back to the easy ones, and some are easy. Some, if it's under 100,000 baht in the bank account, I've had next of kin go into the bank and say, there's a small amount on who I am, here's my passport, and they gave them the money. But over that, they start to, you've got a lot of money in the bank, like most people have 800,000 or so for immigration, and a condo, and they're worth quite substantial amounts, possessions. So sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, but I didn't.
You're telling the truth.
As Richard said, there's no cup holder here, so sorry for that. It will be next time, yes.
All right. Are you able to address your fees and the court fees in probate?
Oh, difficult. How long is a piece of string? Okay. Price for members here for a will, half price, 5,000. If you go to court, like Laurie's particular case, it should have been easy, but it wasn't. It was 5 times going to court. That means 5 times the lawyer has to be paid, the translator has to be paid, travel costs, things like that. Then the bank, there was 2 accounts, one here, one foreign currency account in Bangkok. So someone has to go there, someone has to look after all that. There was at least 5 times that went to the bank. So I won't tell you how much it is, but you can start looking at about 55,000 baht to get a plank to go to court, to get a court date, to go to court once or twice, and then any challenges on that executor or the will. So there's a whole bunch of things that can go right and wrong. So this gentleman here just said he did it very easily and all the rest of it, not much cost. Some of my cases, as you've seen here, those 4 case studies, there's too much to do. You know, I could go and pick an easy one and all that sort of thing, but these take time and effort. And you have to understand that people don't have to fly here. Family members don't fly here. They don't have to get a hotel. So you're looking at a few $1,000s for airfares for a couple of family members, hotel, stay here and all the rest of it. And that money that they would spend on getting here is what we charge as a fee, a couple of $1,000s. My mum's case is 15,000 already. We've got nowhere. So our fees are very, very cheap.
One more. If you have assets in your home country and in Thailand, even though you're residing in Thailand as your residency, or maybe you're half and half, would you recommend getting a will in both countries and try to align them?
Yes.
It's the same, but because of the legal system differences, having a separate will in both systems and maybe even separate executors. So.
You're from the States?
Right. Yes.
Okay, so you've got all those FATCA laws and the IRS looking over you. You've got properties and things here. They want to know about it.
Absolutely, there's some overlap.
Yes. Close your ears, Pat.
Yeah. But you would recommend having a U.S. will as well as a Thai will?
Because you have to have someone in the States to administer your will. Unless you want to fly me over to a couple of weeks and look after things. Right, thank you. Okay. I'll be back.
Okay. I don't know. Is that working?
Yeah.
Very interested in all this conversation, and it recalls to me that you are exceptionally in your job, but also in your prices. Recalling my mother's problem when my father died, the company had it from his father, and 6 brothers and their wives interfering, argued for 15 years.
Yeah, I've heard stories like this. Yeah.
Yes, and a business worth $1.25 million. Taxman had the chunk, all the rest of had the items, and at the end of it, my mother got £5,000.
Yeah.
Right, so it's important.
Well, my mother's estate is not big, and then when it went to court the first time, that was challenged, and the judge a month later said, look, I'll put this to one side, and you guys go and get a mediator and work it out. There's only 4 of you. Work it all out. So we did, except one family member said, no, that's not going to happen. So try and get all your documents together properly, because you saw my mum's will. That's what caused all the problems, and get it done properly.
Sit down, please.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap this up here. We're running funny. Thanks again. We would like to present you with there for